St. Kitts. The mother colony of the West Indies. Here we have mountains with deep ravines carved out by the fury of torrents. It took time to create this island. The sea is all around us, and our bays have inlets like the one in Challengers. Here, at the point where the river joins the sea, is the story of a massacre that was said to have turned the river red with blood for days. On the 9th of August 2014, on the beautiful island of St. Kitts, a delegation of professors and students from Leiden University, in collaboration with the St. Kitts Department of Culture, Research and Documentation Unit, the National Trust and the Brimstone Hill Society, initiated a pilot study focused on understanding pre-Columbian traditions, their sacred sites, and the rich, complex heritage of St. Kitts. The team of professors, researchers, and a camera crew captured and recorded the voices of stakeholders, heritage managers, and local community members What exactly constitutes the heritage of St. Kitts? What stories, which sites are important, and to whom? Which part of our heritage should we care for? Which parts do we keep? We went in search of heritage perspectives. Spain, 1492. The expulsion of the Jews coincides with the completion of the Reconquest. Muslim power in Spain is brought to an end with the fall of Granada. In Santa Fe, the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella are riding high on the success of wiping out Islamic rule in Spain, are debating whether to accept a proposal put to them by an explorer, Christopher Columbus. For years, Columbus has been pestering European courts to sponsor him on an undertaking which obsesses him. Columbus is a scholar of the small earth theory and has become convinced that he can reach India and China more easily by sailing west. On the 3rd of August 1492, Columbus is in command of a fleet of caravels. His mission? To seek fame and fortune, and for Spain, this is a Christian crusade. After 5 weeks at sea, and with a near mutiny, they spot land. Columbus believes that he has reached the East Indies. Greeted by inhabitants of San Salvador, he describes them as Indian. On his voyage, Columbus was said to have come across this small island. Sir Probin Innes, the president of the Brimstone Hill Society, shares with us his findings.
The story goes that he put down anchor somewhere in the Old Road area. There's no evidence that Christopher Columbus landed on any part of St. Kitts. He's supposed to have given it his Christian name, and I suppose Kittitians should feel a sense of pride because he viewed St. Kitts as being special, as being specially beautiful, and as a consequence he gave it his own Christian name. That is one version. Another version is that when he looked at St. Kitts from the sea, he never landed, from the sea, he saw Mount Leamuga, previously called Mount Misery, and according to him, it suggested to him a picture of St. Christopher, the patron saint of travelers, carrying a baby on his back. There are different versions as to how St. Kitts got its name.
Today there is evidence of a civilized world whose culture tells of an egalitarian, vibrant fishing community.
In our history books we were told that the Caribs were fierce, warlike people who came to the islands, massacring the men of the Arawaks who were here before them, taking their women as concubines and dominating tribal life. And of late, research has come out to say that in actual fact, maybe what happened back then is that the people actually traded with one another, traded women as well because of the small population sizes. And so there really wasn't this lie that's been told to us, that's still being told to us in the schools, of a fierce warlike people massacring a friendly, handsome Arawak and taking over his lands and his women. We need to look carefully at what has been taught to us, and that all stems from this 1492 incident where a man comes across the water and says he's found a way to India.
The Amerindians had been here for a long time, and they had developed their own way of life. They had their own form of government, their own religious ceremonies and symbols, and they lived consistent with the way in which the world was at that particular time. We know that they were extremely good seamen, that they made wonderful boats which traveled between St. Kitts and Dominica, where there was another Amerindian presence.
For the Kalinago people, a whole existence is woven around a landscape. These sacred cave paintings, a direct reference to the natural world around them, which opens the door to the spirituality of an existence of a distant past.
I am certain that the Carib Indians and also the Arawaks who preceded them would have fished from the river, Wingfield River, which no longer flows regularly to the sea. They would have fished in that river because you had freshwater mullets. This is something that a lot of people, even people who live in Old Road, doesn't know. Just like the Carib Indians and the Arawaks, the people of Old Road could virtually have lived out of Wingfield River because you had freshwater eels, you had langoustine, you had crayfish, and you had the freshwater mullets. So all of that were here. Of course, too, they would have fished from the sea as well. Throughout the length and breadth of St. Kitts, Old Road has become known as the #1 fishing area.
The Amerindians tended to live pretty close to waterside, river courses, because they were extremely clean as a people, and they used a lot of water in terms of their religious ceremonies and practices and so forth and so on.
Could they have predicted that in just a few years their world would change forever? The first contact with the outside world would bring destruction and a religious fervour on a scale that has never been repeated. The Catholic religious intolerance was merciless. But the final blow was yet to come. In the spring of 1609, the slave market was revived. 1624, the first British colony was founded here in St. Christopher by Thomas Warner.
The English came along 1623, 1624, having been invited by King Tegument to work alongside them. And the Europeans who were coming out from Europe did not know very much about tropical agriculture. And so they inherited a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the practices of the Amerindians. And not for the first time, once the Europeans enter a particular country, the Aboriginal people are wiped out, either by disease or by war.
Relationships were strained between the Europeans and the Kalinago people of the island. We hear from Lloyd Cranston.
The English were very, very greedy because they came in and met the Caribs. When they meet the Caribs draw over. They gave them a part that they could settle. But then they start going over further on the Caribs.
The Europeans, in their thirst for gold, jewels and land, pushed the generous land dwellers to breaking point.
The confrontation took place at what came to be known as Bloody River. The Amerindians sought to get reinforcements from Dominica, and this did not happen, but they resisted strenuously. The story goes that their blood ran, it is said, for days along the Stonefort River. I don't think we have given enough credit to the Kalinago people in terms of the contribution which they've made to our way of life here. We do not know enough about the Amerindian way of life.
Just come from a Turkish land to fight. I took St. David from his foot.
There's an African proverb that speaks to true history being told when the lion can tell the tale of the hunter.
We need to get our younger generation more involved by telling them more of our history, telling them how important heritage is to a country, not just for tourism purposes, but as part and parcel of their way of life.
Today, the majority of the people on St. Christopher Island are of African descent.
We need to know more about our ancestors, our African ancestors, because so much that we learned from the English books made us feel that they're not worthy of study and they're not worthy of emulation.
Culture can be unifying, bringing people together. Culture can also be divisive, driving us apart with our different experiences.
The importance of community. This is something which Africans brought. They came from a society in which those two elements were extremely strong. And though they were not Christians, they had very strong religious faith. They were very spiritual people, which is why they survived all of the outrageous things which were done to them as a people. And as a consequence, many of them ended up saying, well, you may enslave the body, but you can't enslave the spirit, you can't enslave the soul. So in the end, when emancipation came, they recognized and they said to all the world that we had to concede, we had to give in to the superior force and the brutality of slavery. But we never surrendered to slavery.
You know why? The children of the art of a lion.
Archaeological sites are often focused on the monuments and objects. A different perspective is focused on by the people of the land. Our indifference is not that we do not care. What we seem to value most is the knowledge that we have, not the objects that we keep. We collect our history in intangible ways. We have a rich oral history. We treasure the knowledge, not the treasures that have been looted by archaeologists.
I certainly think that we need to look at it from our perspective. Not even in terms of what our ancestors suffered, but what they were able to achieve and to overcome. Many of the history books coming out of Europe gave us the impression that the African people were docile, the African people were dumb, and they were ignorant. And I'm saying that Brimstone Hill today is a contradiction, is evidence of the fact that our ancestors were strong physically and emotionally and spiritually.
So, shall we continue to empower the community with the knowledge of our past?
I just wish we could get more of our people. It isn't for the leadership to be carrying the flag and talking about Brimstone Hill and talking about Charles Fort. Yes, they do that. But in my mind, more importantly is that process of empowerment, whereby the citizenry take ownership of it, recognize it as their own history and heritage, something which they feel a sense of pride in passing on to their children, something they feel a sense of pride in showing off to visitors,